We have many clients who are hesitant. They have this guilt. I don't want to take money away from a firefighter. I don't want to take money away from the Red Cross volunteer. They're not. The money is earmarked. The money is there.
Staten Islander News is here today with Sarah Director. Sarah Director is a partner at Barish and McGarry, who handles 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund claims, as well as complex personal injury cases. Sarah joined Barish and McGarry in 2006 and earned her partnership in 2018 after demonstrating her dedication and commitment to the firm's clients, resulting in numerous multi-million-dollar recoveries. Sarah, a 9/11 survivor herself, interacts with the firm's 9/11 clients daily, from their initial phone call to submitting their claims to the Victim Compensation Fund. Drawing upon her 2 decades of court litigation experience, she has successfully won multiple appeals for our 9/11 clients. Her persistence, legal insight, and personal attention to every client have enabled her to win even the most challenging of appeal situations. She has also been honored to lecture at numerous 9/11 related events to help spread the word about the Victim Compensation Fund and World Trade Center Healthcare Program. So, good morning, Sarah. It's good to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So we have a good number of questions kind of about both of the Victim Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program, which are different. And that's kind of the first question that we're going to go into. So there are two different federal programs that were created to help people impacted by 9/11, the World Trade Center Health Program and Victim Compensation Fund. What does each program do and how do they work together?
So that's a great way to start off. So there are two programs, the World Trade Center Health Program and then the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, often referred to as the VCF. The health program provides medical care for the 9/11 responders and survivors who've been diagnosed with one of the 69 cancers or a serious respiratory illness. They also provide much needed care and support for those suffering from mental illness resulting from 9/11. The VCF, the Victim Compensation Fund, is a secondary federal program that provides compensation to those people who have been certified with the 9/11 illness by the health program. So for living 9/11 responders and survivors, the first stop would be the health program to be evaluated, to be certified with having a 9/11 related condition. The second stop would be the VCF for compensation. Now, for our clients who have lost a loved one, or for our clients who have passed away, they can also go to the VCF for compensation directly, even if not certified by the health program.
Okay. And why are these programs needed nearly 25 years after 9/11?
So people are still developing 9/11 related illnesses and cancers every single day. The problem is getting actually worse as we move further away from 9/11. Many types of cancers take decades to develop. And the 9/11 community still needs a lot of help with this. A lot of people think 9/11 happened, right, 25, close to 25 years ago. No one could be getting sick from this. And the medical community and our clients just showed this isn't the case. When the Zadroga Act, which was actually named for Barish and McGarry client, NYPD detective and 9/11 hero James Zadroga, when it was reauthorized in 2019, it was extended to 2092. The reason why it's extended to 2092 is to ensure that it takes care of people who were exposed to the 9/11 toxins as children. Maybe they were in elementary school and kids just living in the exposure zone. So we represent hundreds, thousands of 9/11 survivors who were infants and young children on 9/11. That's why these programs are around for so long.
Got it. Okay. And then, according to the CDC data, not only does the 9/11 community have common cancers like skin cancer, lung cancer, and breast cancer, but also rare cancers like leukemia, brain cancer, and male breast cancer, which affects 1 in every 100,000 people, and yet your firm represents nearly 100. What kinds of health conditions have you seen happening to people who were there at the time?
So When I first started doing this work, there was no cancers linked to the toxins, and now there is 69 cancers linked. And it's unfortunate, but in a given day, we can interact with people who have one of the 69 different types of cancers. Some we see more often, skin cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, but we see the rare cancers. We see leukemia, we see a lot of blood cancers, bile duct cancer, thyroid cancer. Unfortunately, the list is very, very long.
Okay. And this is basically, you're talking about like people who were like in that area, breathing it in, getting it on their skin from being outside, the toxins from 9/11.
Correct. So there are two different requirements, one for the health program and one for the victim compensation fund. For the victim compensation fund, if you lived, worked, went to school, was a responder, a volunteer, and you were below, south of Canal Street during the 8 months after 9/11. So you might not have been there on 9/11, but you returned to school, say 3 weeks later, or you returned to work in January of '02. You could still qualify because the exposure period runs from 9/11/01 through May 30th of '02 for the Victim Compensation Fund.
Okay. And that's kind of like when everything was mostly cleaned up, or what made them decide that that's the time period?
Because the toxins remained in the air. We might not have been able to see them, but they were still certainly there. So the scientific medical community did their studies and they made the determination that during the 8 months after 9/11, the toxins were still so prevalent within the air. We were breathing them in, they were seeping through our skin, that that is the exposure period. And south of Canal Street, did the dust go north of Canal Street? Did it go into Brooklyn? Of course it did. Nobody is suggesting that the dust didn't travel, but a line had to be drawn, and that's the line that they drew for the Victim Compensation Fund south of Canal.
Okay. And do they know what the toxins were that are causing all of these cancers and stuff?
There is a long list of the toxins that were found in our client Jimmy Zadroga's lungs. And in addition, there's been numerous studies. There's a list of scientific and medical terms that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce for you, but certainly we are aware of what we breathed in.
Okay, so that was kind of like that toxic cloud was actually like a toxic cloud, and it was just letting out its dust for basically, like you said, 9 months.
8 months after for the Victim Compensation Fund. For the health program, it's extended a little longer through July of '02, but concentrating on the Victim Compensation Fund, it's for the 8 months. And it certainly was a toxic dust cloud. Yes, it was visible in the days and weeks after 9/11. And then we were told the air is safe, go back to work, go back to school, go back to your residence. And the air certainly was not safe.
Right, right. So, a few years ago, uterine cancer became the 69th cancer added to the 9/11 Health Registry, and your firm played an important part in that process. Can you please explain how a new illness gets certified and what are some of the other diseases being studied or considered?
So conditions are added when the medical evidence demonstrates a connection between the ground zero exposure and that type of illness or cancer. The World Trade Center Health Program has a scientific technical advisory committee known as STAC that considers the evidence and adds to the list of covered conditions as needed. There are several conditions that are being studied now, neuropathy, autoimmune disease, some cardiac issues. My firm, Barish Gary, continues to advocate for the inclusion of these and other conditions. Like I said, when I first started doing this work, no cancers were connected, and now 69 are. The advocacy that my firm does is trying to reach as many people within the 9/11 community and urge them to go to their doctor, explain their exposure, to enroll in the health program, to let the health program doctors know all their illnesses, not just the ones covered by 9/11. The uterine cancer, the doctors within the clinics for the health program kept seeing women coming in with uterine and endometrial cancer, but they were there for perhaps their skin cancer or their asthma, another condition that was covered. And the doctors raised a red flag and said, we have this small community. So many women are coming in with this cancer that's not linked. We need to do further research. And thankfully, it became the 69th cancer, and women are on equal footing with men. When the medical community started doing research into the illnesses related to 9/11, naturally, they started with our 9/11 first responders, FDNY, NYPD. There's plenty of women that are in the ranks of NYPD and FDNY, but there's more men. So the cohort made up of more men. They didn't have enough women to study when they started adding cancers to the covered conditions. And
Right,
it did
right.
take 20 plus years to identify that uterine and endometrial cancer is linked to 9/11 toxins.
Okay. And then, contrary to what many people think, these programs are not only for first responders. What other groups of people are eligible for the World Trade Center Health Program and Victim Compensation Fund, and how can a person determine if they're eligible?
This is a great question, and it's something we face every day. Both programs are not just for our 9/11 heroes. It's not for just men and women in uniform. It's for anyone that lived, worked, went to school, below Houston for the health program and below Canal Street for the Victim Compensation Fund. One of the main goals of Barish McGarry is to make sure that every person within the 9/11 community knows that these programs are set up for them. We have many clients who are hesitant. They have this guilt. I don't want to take money away from a firefighter. I don't want to take money away from the Red Cross volunteer. They're not. The money is earmarked. The money is there. They are entitled to it. The the toxins didn't care if you were FDNY or if you were an elementary school student. They didn't discriminate. They didn't care if you're Republican. They didn't care if you're a Democrat. If you were below Canal Street for the required amount of time, you may be entitled to compensation. You may be entitled to health care from the health program. We urge people to reach out to our law firm, to do their own investigation, to figure out, are they eligible? Do they qualify? It takes all the 5-minute phone call with someone from my law firm that can truly change your future.
Right. And then the CDC data shows that applications from approximately 2,815 survivors and 1,657 responders were suspended last year. And the main reason given was insufficient documentation. Can you explain what kinds of documentation you need to prove that you were there and what the application process is like?
Sure. So to enroll in the health program or file a claim with the Victim Compensation Fund, you need to prove your presence in the exposure zone and your exposure to the toxins during the exposure period. And there's various ways to prove this, and the standard between the health program and the Victim Compensation Fund is different, even though they're both federal programs. You can have an employment verification letter if you work downtown. You can have apartment leases, tax returns, and school transcripts if you went to school down here because I am on Park Place in the exposure zone. Most times we do end up using eyewitness statements from those who saw our clients living, working, volunteering within the zone. With that said, the application process requires paperwork. It's an administrative process. Barish McGarry, we have full teams here to help enroll into the health program and then help submit your claim to the Victim Compensation Fund. We want to do the heavy lifting. When you are diagnosed with a cancer, be it one of the more serious cancers, a brain cancer, or even a less severe basal cell cancer, you want to take care of your health. You want to take care of your family. You want to continue working. You don't want to be frustrated with submitting documents or being denied. Can one do it on their own? Of course, but I don't file my own taxes. I can, but I certainly am not going to. So that's what Barish McGarry is here to do, to take that burden away from people that are suffering from these illnesses. and do the hard work for them.
Okay. And now the health program kind of pays doctors. Is that how that part works? Like, whereas the compensation fund pays the victims, but the health program is for them to go to doctors and to pay the doctors?
So the health program has many different functions. One of the functions is to get certified with the 9/11 illness to prove your exposure to the toxins, get certified, so then you can go get compensation. That is the first step. They also provide yearly monitoring of your 9/11 conditions once you are certified. They provide secondary health insurance should your health insurance not cover some of the treatments that are required for your conditions. If you break your arm, they're not paying for that because that's not related to 9/11.
Okay. So, but they do pay so it's more like for the medical side of your condition is the healthcare fund,
Correct.
the healthcare program. Okay. And does it cover like it would cover like hospital treatments, chemotherapy, things like that?
If your primary insurance, you need to have primary insurance. If it doesn't cover that, and if it is accepted by the health program, they can supplement the insurance.
Okay, okay. And are there any are there different practitioners included under the health program? So if somebody wanted to go to a dietitian for some of the the new dietary recommendations that the American Medical Association has made, so that people should incorporate more whole foods, more plant-based foods into their diet, and they want to go to a dietitian to get that specifically, that's not covered.
It's a good question that I don't have an answer to.
Okay. Okay. Um, so do you have to be sick to apply for either program, or is it that that if a person is healthy, that do you guys recommend putting in an application?
So we recommend that anybody that was exposed to the toxins register with the Victim Compensation Fund. That is an easy process, bcf.gov, and you register. It's a placeholder. We do encourage anyone that's sick to go to the health program. If you were there's different criteria. If you're a first responder, you can go to the health program, be evaluated, and be monitored, even if you're not sick. If you are a survivor and you are not sick, you get really one free evaluation by the health program. So while you can go and be evaluated, if you then become ill, you will need to go back to be further evaluated. You will probably have to pay for that. So I never want to discourage anyone from not enrolling in both programs, but there are different criteria. I do urge anyone that was exposed to collect their proof of presence. That's what we call it, proof of presence now. Get your obtain your statements now, obtain your school transcripts now, obtain your leases now, because thankfully, if you're not sick 25 years later, hopefully at 30, 35, 40 years, you won't be, but it becomes that much harder to obtain this information. Unfortunately, the community is dying at a rate that is very, very scary. So thinking that your office mate will be around in 5, 10 years to write that statement for you, they might not be.
Okay. And so you want to get the and for the Victims Compensation Fund, you just have to have been in the exposure area, but you don't have to get sick in order to qualify for that one?
So no, you can register with the Victim Compensation Fund, and registering is like a placeholder. It provides you with the VCF number to then activate when and if needed.
Okay. And so then if you do get sick, then you get compensated.
Well, you first have to get certified by the health program. That is the first step. And then you make the application to the VCF. Nothing is a guarantee. There is still requirements to prove.
Okay. Um, and I know that you had covered already that if your loved one already passed away, that it's actually not too late to apply.
Correct.
Okay. And Staten Island State
If,
Senator,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I could just jump back because it's I want to give that question a little bit more attention because it is so important.
sure.
Um, again, we lose about 2 to 3 clients a day. And we lose them to their 9/11 illness. And wherever they are within the process, perhaps they were already paid out by the VCF or their claim is in process. If they passed away as a result of a 9/11 illness, we can make what's known as a wrongful death claim to seek additional compensation for the family. And it goes above and beyond just the wrongful death claim. We can seek lost earnings from pre-death through life work expectancy date. We can request for reimbursement for funeral and burial costs. We can request for placement services. There is a whole host of different type of components of an award that we can ask for. Now, why is this so important? Because our clients are fighting for their lives and knowing that, God forbid they pass from their illness, the government is going to do what they promised. They're never forgetting, and they're going to help give the family some financial stability. It can't bring your loved one back. It can't take away the pain and suffering that they went through. But having unfortunately worked with hundreds of clients that have passed, knowing that their passing will provide their family with additional financial compensation, it gives them some peace of mind when they need it the most. And even if your loved one was not enrolled in any program, the family can start the process on their own. So I said you need to be certified. If somebody was never certified but passed away, say from breast cancer, and they were a 9/11 survivor, we can make the claim directly to the Victim Compensation Fund on behalf of the family.
Right. So Staten Island State Senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton sponsored a bill that was signed by Governor Hochul in September. This legislation created efficiencies in World Trade Center disability and death benefit application processes for the New York City Police Pension Fund. What role does this play in helping first responders access 9/11 benefits?
So we're so very thankful. This legislation plays a meaningful role. This legislation plays a meaningful role because it speeds up the pension process. At the moment, first responders and their families are under enormous pressure. When a responder develops a 9/11 related illness, they often face fast changing medical needs and major financial uncertainty. A delayed disability or death benefit can leave a family in limbo. By creating a clearer, more efficient system within the police pension fund, this bill helps responders get determinations faster. It reduces red tape and ensures families aren't left waiting for essential support during a crisis. It brings common sense efficiency to a process that historically moved too slowly for the people who sacrificed the most.
Right. Okay. Now, on the flip side, Governor Hochul signed the 9/11 Notice Act in 2023 to help more people in the survivor community, specifically office workers and those working in Lower Manhattan retail shops, restaurants, and other businesses or schools who may be eligible and not realize it. Can you explain what that bill does and why it's important?
Sure, this is an extremely important bill and one that Barish McGarry lobbied for fiercely. The 9/11 Notice Act requires employers to notify anyone who worked in the exposure zone after 9/11 that they may be eligible for the free health care from the health program and compensation through the Victim Compensation Fund. These notices can be sent by email, text, mail, as long as they are sent out. It's helping to connect the dots for people that aren't aware that these programs are for them. Many survivors, especially office workers who worked in Lower Manhattan, in the restaurants, in the shops, they have no idea that they qualify. Responders have unions to remind them to register, to remind them that this process is for them. Survivors usually don't. And think about how many people were here after 9/11 and then moved across the country. We have clients in every single state, and the people that have moved might not be receiving as much information as those that are still in New York. 9/11 is not just a New York issue, but New Yorkers give it the most attention. So if you went to school in Lower Manhattan on 9/11, if you were employed in Lower Manhattan on 9/11 and you moved to Alabama, you might not get much 9/11 news. But when you get that letter or that email from your former employer saying, did you know that you have a right to enroll in the health program and you might be entitled to compensation? It helps those employees connect the dots saying, I have this rare cancer that is not in my family. My doctor can't understand why I developed this cancer. And this act will enable these survivors to get the healthcare they need, get the compensation they need, and get some understanding as to why they're sick.
Right, exactly. Um, okay. And then there has been a lot of change in the federal government since President Trump took office. You had DOJ cutting a lot of the workforce, including in places like the CDC, which administers the World Trade Center Health Program. And our readers may actually remember that we had reported on Senator Gillibrand talking about this and Senator Schumer as well. So where does the program stand now? And what are you hearing anecdotally from the 9/11 community as they seek to access care and certify illnesses?
Well, thankfully, the World Trade Center healthcare program remains stable, and many of our earlier concerns about staffing and capacity have been resolved. What's been clear across every administration is that 9/11 healthcare and compensation, they're not political issues. They've never been. The Democrats, Republicans, Independents have consistently supported these programs, have been unified in their support because they serve responders and survivors who were harmed through no fault of their own. There's not many issues that we can say are not political, and 9/11 should not be a political issue. And people are continuing to access care and get certified for the illnesses the way the program was designed. The process is working, the oversight is strong, and not most, but very importantly, there is simply no fraud. There is no fraud in the health program or the VCF. Our focus is to keep that bipartisan cooperation going so the health program can be fully funded and fully functional for the lifetime of everybody within the 9/11 community.
Right. And it is important for you to note that because when people were talking about what the DOJ cuts were about, it was supposed to be about waste, fraud, and abuse. So if there wasn't any waste and there wasn't any fraud and there wasn't any abuse, the program should have been left alone, which, as you
Correct.
said, it kind of was eventually.
In the beginning, there was, I would say, some missteps, but they were corrected.
Okay. And then both the World Trade Center Health Program and the Victim Compensation Fund are funded separately by the government. Can you explain how each is funded?
So the BCF and the health program, as you said, they are funded through the government, but they are funded differently. The VCF is permanently funded through 2092. The awards, the money come from the US Treasury General Fund. There's no cap on how much can be paid out. Congress made a commitment that every eligible responder and survivor will be compensated, and the Treasury must provide whatever amount is required. The health program is different. It's not structured that way. It also receives money from the Treasury, but through a capped annual appropriation written into the authorizing law. That means that the health program gets a fixed amount each year rather than an open-ended guarantee. Because the costs of treating 9/11 related cancers and chronic illnesses have risen sharply in a way that nobody anticipated, that cap structure is why the program is facing a very big shortfall currently. And I think that leads you into your next question.
Right. Oh, okay, right. So there is currently a bill in Congress, the 9/11 Responder and Survivor Health Funding Correction Act of 2025, which this is actually not the first correction act that's happened with the World Trade Center funds. So that is meant to fill a $3 billion budget shortfall in the World Trade Center Health Program. Why does the program have such a large shortfall? And how is your law firm helping to fight for passage of the bill? And what happens if it doesn't pass?
So the shortfall exists because the number of responders and survivors developing these cancers have far exceeded the original projections. Nobody imagined the fallout that is still occurring now and will continue occurring. These diseases often appear decades later, and they're extraordinarily expensive to treat. The cost of care has simply outpaced the program's initial budget assumptions. Our law firm, led by Michael Barish and supporters of our entire firm, we've been to Capitol Hill repeatedly, not just this year, but every year that's needed, with advocates like John Feal from the Feel Good Foundation, meeting with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. The 9/11 Responder and Survivor Health Correction Act of 2025, it's not a new agenda. It's necessary to fix, to keep the health program operating as Congress intended for the lifetime of the 9/11 community. I don't even want to consider if the bill doesn't pass, but if it doesn't, the consequences are quite severe. Starting in 27, the program will be forced to limit new enrollment and eventually could restrict care to people already receiving it. This outcome really is just unacceptable. It's something we will not let happen. There's already 119 co-sponsors in the House, so we are very much encouraged, but this does not stop us from continuing to lobby. I personally have been to Washington. It's an honor to advocate and lobby on behalf of the community I'm proudly a part of. Barish McGarry will not rest until this bill is passed, until every 9/11 responder and survivor can rest at night knowing that their healthcare is going to be taken care of. It's a travesty that we still have to fight for this.
Right. Yeah, and actually for people who haven't ever had a family member or relative who was diagnosed with any kind of cancer, they may not be aware, like some of these cancers, if you get a dose of radiation or if you get a dose of a chemotherapy drug, one dose can, and this is 10 years ago, was $10,000 for that one dose. So what you're talking about where the costs have skyrocketed astronomically, like if it was $10,000 a dose, like who could pay for that, you know, and most health insurances don't cover that kind of treatment themselves. So it kind of makes sense why they would have needed to extend the fund. And then Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis has publicly supported the 9/11 Responder and Survivor Health Fund and Correction Act of 2025. How important is her backing for that bill, and what impact could her advocacy have on ensuring the World Trade Center Health Program remains fully funded?
So Congresswoman Malliotakis has been a strong supporter of the 9/11 community, and her backing really does matter. Staten Island has one of the highest concentrations of responders and survivors, and many are still battling cancers and chronic illness from their service and will continue to be diagnosed as the years go on. Keeping bipartisan support around 9/11 issues is essential. Her advocacy reinforces that protecting the health program isn't about party lines. It's about honoring the people who showed up. When members like Congresswoman Malliotakis speak up, it strengthens the coalition needed to secure the long-term funding for the health program. The health program must continue caring for the responders and survivors, and we're very thankful to the Congresswoman for being a voice for the 9/11 community.
Okay. And Congresswoman Malliotakis has also co-sponsored the American Victims of Terror Compensation Act, which addresses victims of state-sponsored terrorism, including 9/11 families. How does that piece of legislation connect with the broader fight to ensure justice and compensation for those impacted by 9/11 related illnesses?
So this bill is a meaningful complement to the broader fight for the 9/11 community. It has bipartisan support and would expand funding for the U.S. Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorist Fund, which help Americans who lost loved ones to attacks backed by Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, and other state sponsors of terrorism. My law partner, Barry Salzman, has been a leading advocate for these families, and we've seen firsthand how long they've waited for justice. We're hoping this legislation will finally allow grieving families to receive awards they've already been deemed eligible for.
Okay, that makes sense. And kind of before we close, I do want to mention that one of our previous videos was a conversation with a dietitian about nutritional nutritional ways to address cancers. So I just want to mention for our audience, there are ways to prevent developing cancers. That's according to the American Medical Association. And I'm going to put that on screen as well, just so people can see what their official statement is. It does require dietary changes, especially exercise, and good nutrition. So those things can actually go a really long way to, especially with breast cancers, to prevent them from developing, because it strengthens people's immunity to have a better diet, more whole foods, more, like they call it, plant-centered, like where plant forward rather, where you eat as much plant materials, and they help your body to function more optimally, and according to the American Medical Association, this kind of diet can actually prevent cancer from developing. So when you look at the costs of treating cancer that has developed, it can really be astronomical.
I think that's such a great point for your readers, especially those within the 9/11 community, because we are at a greater risk to develop these cancers, and everything we can do to reduce our risk, including plant-forward eating, we should all take a look at it and consider it, because we're earmarked for these illnesses.
Yeah,
And we have
from
to
just
do
like
our
what you were
part.
saying. Sorry, from like what you were saying before, how you lose 1 to 2 people. Did you say every day?
Every day.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yes, it is.
Um, so was there anything else that you would like to add today?
I would like to thank you for shining a light on all these important topics. I just urge all your readers to help spread the word. I'm hoping that they are knowledgeable if they are a 9/11 survivor responder, what their rights are, but maybe reach out to someone that moved away, someone that they worked with, someone that they volunteered with that might not know that their illness is related to 9/11. Your one phone call can truly change that of somebody else, change the life of somebody else. You can reach out to children who've lost their parents, who maybe lived or worked or went to school in Lower Manhattan during the exposure period. The goal of Barish McGarry is really to make sure that every 9/11 community member knows their rights, have access to the health program, have access to the compensation, to get the Health Program Correction Act passed, and just to keep fighting for additional illnesses to be added, to make sure that everybody has a voice and everyone is heard.
Thank you so much for your time today. So I just really wanted to thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.